My name is Lottie, and today I turned 68. I spent weeks planning a birthday celebration, baking my special apple pie and decorating the house with family photos. I waited all afternoon, watching the clock tick past 5, then 6, then 7. No one came. No calls, nothing. Later that night, as tears stained my cheeks, I scrolled through Facebook and froze. There they were, my son, his wife, my grandchildren, all smiling from the deck of a cruise ship. A vacation no one had mentioned to me. I just smiled. What they didn't know was that I had a DNA test ready that would make my daughter-in-law go pale. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt forgotten by family, hit that subscribe button and join me for a story about truth that finally came to light. Life changed dramatically after my husband Frank passed away 5 years ago. We'd been married for 43 wonderful years, and suddenly I found myself alone in our Portland home that once echoed with laughter and conversation. I still have his reading glasses on the nightstand. I just can't bring myself to move them. My son Thomas is 45 now, married to Audrey, who's 42. They gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren, Jamie, who just turned 18 and started college this fall, and Sophia, who's 15 and already talking about which universities she wants to apply to. They live about 30 minutes away in the suburbs, in the house Frank and I helped them buy when they were struggling with the down payment. I've always tried to be there for them. When Thomas lost his job during the recession, I covered their mortgage for 8 months. When both kids were young, I watched them 3 days a week, so Audrey could work part-time at her marketing firm. I've been setting aside money for their college funds since they were born. That's what family does. We support each other. But things started changing about 2 years ago. The Sunday dinners became monthly, then occasional. Phone calls grew shorter. I'd offer to babysit Sophia or help Jamie with his science projects. But there was always an excuse. "We've got it handled, Mom," Thomas would say, or Audrey would chime in, "We don't want to burden you." I didn't feel burdened. I felt increasingly isolated. For my 68th birthday, I wanted to bring everyone together again. I spent 3 weeks planning. I made shopping lists and decorated the house with photographs from family vacations and celebrations. I baked Frank's favorite apple pie recipe that the kids always loved. I prepared Thomas's favorite pot roast and Audrey's preferred salmon dish. I bought thoughtful gifts for everyone: a leather wallet for Thomas, a spa certificate for Audrey, new headphones for Jamie, and concert tickets for Sophia. I woke up on my birthday feeling excited. I put on my favorite blue dress and pearl necklace, the one Frank gave me on our 30th anniversary. I set the table with our good china-lit candles and waited. By 3 o'clock, no one had arrived. I called Thomas, straight to voicemail. I texted Audrey, no response. I even tried calling Jamie and Sophia. Nothing. As each hour passed, my heart sank lower. By 7 o'clock, I blew out the candles that had burned down to stubs. I put the food away, carefully wrapping each dish. I sat in my armchair, the one that still holds the shape of Frank's body, and felt the tears come. Later that evening, I decided to check Facebook, thinking perhaps there had been an emergency. That's when I saw it. Audrey had posted dozens of photos that day of Thomas, Jamie, and Sophia on the deck of a cruise ship headed to the Bahamas. "Surprise family vacation," the caption read. So needed this getaway with the people who matter most. The timestamp showed she'd posted them that morning. In one photo, they were all holding tropical drinks, toasting to family time. They were smiling, laughing without a care in the world, without a thought of me sitting alone on my birthday. I stared at those photos for a long time, feeling something inside me crack and then harden. The initial shock of seeing those photos gave way to a deep, aching hurt. I thought about all the birthdays, Christmases, and special moments when I'd been there for them. The nights I'd stayed up with sick grandchildren so Thomas and Audrey could sleep. The financial help, the emotional support. And now, not even a phone call on my birthday. I poured myself a small glass of Frank's favorite whiskey, something I rarely drink, and tried to make sense of it all. My mind drifted back to when Thomas first introduced Audrey to us 15 years ago. She was charming with a ready smile and quick wit. Frank liked her immediately. "She'll keep our boy on his toes," he'd said with approval. In those early years, Audrey would call me for advice about cooking, gardening, or how to soothe Jamie when he was colicky. We'd have lunch together sometimes, just the two of us. She seemed genuinely interested in family stories and would ask to see old photo albums. But something shifted after Frank died. Gradually, Audrey became more distant, more controlling of family plans. If I suggested a weekend visit, she'd have already made other arrangements. If I offered to help with the children, she'd insist they were on tight schedules. She didn't want disrupted. Small inconsistencies began to appear in their stories too. Thomas would mention they stayed home all weekend, but Sophia would innocently reference a trip to the beach. Audrey would say they couldn't visit because Jamie had a game, but I'd later learn the game had been cancelled. After discovering the cruise photos, I tried calling everyone again. Still no answer. I left voicemails trying to sound normal, wishing them a good vacation, saying I hoped they were having fun. Inside, I was crumbling. The next morning, I called my best friend Martha. We've known each other since nursing school nearly 50 years ago, and she's the sister I never had. I told her everything. "Something isn't right, Lottie," Martha said after listening to me. "It's not just about the birthday. It's about how they've been treating you for years now." "What do you mean?" I asked, though deep down I knew. "Remember last Christmas, when Audrey made that odd comment about Jamie not looking like Thomas, and how defensive she got when you mentioned how much he looked like his father?" I did remember. It had seemed strange at the time, but I'd brushed it off. Martha continued, "And remember how Audrey never wants Jamie to get tested for that heart condition that runs in your family, the one Frank had to monitor. She always has an excuse." Something clicked in my mind. I went to my bedroom and pulled out the family photo albums. I spent hours comparing pictures of Thomas as a teenager with recent photos of Jamie. There were differences I'd never noticed before. The shape of Jamie's nose, his earlobes, the color pattern in his eyes. Thomas and Frank both had a distinctive cleft in their chin. Jamie's chin was smooth. The genetic heart condition Martha mentioned, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, had appeared in Frank's family for generations. Thomas had been tested at 16 and shows mild signs. Jamie should have been tested at the same age, but Audrey always resisted, claiming it caused unnecessary anxiety. A suspicion began forming in my mind, one that made my stomach turn. What if Jamie wasn't Thomas's biological son? The next morning, still reeling from my suspicions, I ordered 2 DNA testing kits online. As a retired nurse, I understood genetics enough to know what I was looking for. I paid extra for expedited shipping and results. While waiting for the kits to arrive, I tried to distract myself by cleaning out some old paperwork. In my filing cabinet, I found folders containing records of all the financial assistance I had provided to Thomas and Audrey over the years. There were cancelled checks for their mortgage during Thomas's unemployment, records of the $20,000 I'd contributed to their home down payment, documentation of the college funds I'd established for both grandchildren. I'd never kept track of these things to hold over their heads. It was family helping family. But seeing it all laid out, I realized just how much they had taken while giving so little in return. Digging deeper into my records, I found something troubling. Years ago, I had added Thomas's name to one of my bank accounts, just in case something happened to me. Looking at recent statements, I noticed small, regular withdrawals I hadn't made. $200 here, $300 there. Over the past 2 years, these unauthorized withdrawals totaled nearly $10,000. My hands trembled as I realized my own son had been stealing from me. I called the bank and learned Thomas had set up automatic transfers to a joint account I'd never heard of. When I asked for more information, they couldn't share details without Thomas's permission. The DNA kits arrived 3 days later. I knew I needed a sample from both Thomas and Jamie to confirm my suspicions. For Thomas, I had an old hairbrush he'd left at my house. For Jamie, I needed to be more creative. I remembered Jamie had left a water bottle in my car the last time I'd driven him to a school event 2 months ago. I'd kept it meaning to wash and recycle it. Instead, it had been pushed to the back of a cabinet. It might still have traces of his DNA. I carefully swabbed the bottle opening and sealed the sample according to the kit instructions. I did the same with Thomas's hairbrush. Then I mailed them off, paying extra again for rush processing. While waiting for results, I continued my investigation. I found Thomas and Audrey's wedding invitation list in my keepsake box. One name jumped out at me: Brian Peterson, Audrey's ex-boyfriend from college. Thomas had mentioned him once, saying Audrey had dated him seriously before they met. A quick social media search revealed Brian still lived in the area, just 1 town over. On his profile, I found recent photos. My heart skipped a beat. The resemblance between him and Jamie was striking. The same nose, the same smile, the same smooth chin. I looked through more of Brian's photos and found one from 18 years ago. Brian with his arm around a younger Audrey. The timestamp was approximately 9 months before Jamie was born. A week later, the DNA results arrived by email. I sat at my computer, heart pounding, as I opened the file. The test confirmed my worst fears. Thomas and Jamie were not biologically related. The probability of paternity was 0%. I felt physically ill. All these years, Audrey had lied to everyone. Thomas was raising another man's son without knowing it. With the DNA results confirming my suspicions, I felt both vindicated and devastated. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just about a forgotten birthday or a secret vacation. This was about the foundation of our family being built on lies. I decided to dig deeper into Audrey's past with Brian Peterson. Through some internet searching and help from Martha, who was surprisingly skilled with social media for a woman in her 60s, I discovered Audrey and Brian had maintained contact over the years. There were comments on old posts, vague birthday wishes, nothing overtly romantic, but enough to indicate an ongoing connection. Then I found something more concrete. Through a mutual friend's wedding photos, I saw Audrey and Brian together at an event 3 years ago. Thomas wasn't in any of the pictures from that day. Martha suggested I look into financial connections. Money leaves a trail, she said, drawing on her experience as a former hospital administrator. I remembered Thomas once gave me his password to their family computer when I was house-sitting. On a hunch, I checked if the same password would work for their online banking. It did. A careless security oversight that would prove revealing. In their joint account transaction history, I discovered monthly transfers to an account holder named B. Peterson, dating back 5 years. The amounts varied between $300 and $500. The memo line simply read, "Support." Was Thomas aware of these payments? Did he know who was receiving them? I couldn't imagine he would knowingly send money to his wife's ex-boyfriend. I printed the transaction records, adding them to my growing file of evidence. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. In their email account was a folder labeled Insurance Documents. Inside was correspondence with a lawyer regarding a potential inheritance for Jamie from the Peterson Family Trust. The emails discussed how to ensure Jamie would be included as a beneficiary without revealing the biological connection. Audrey knew. She had always known Jamie wasn't Thomas's son, and she had deliberately hidden it all while maintaining contact with Brian and even ensuring Jamie would benefit financially from his biological father's family. The more I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a one-time indiscretion Audrey was hiding out of shame. This was a calculated, long-term deception. I wondered if Thomas had ever suspected. There had been a period about 5 years ago when he seemed unusually distant and troubled. He'd come to visit me alone several times, sitting quietly in Frank's old chair, not saying much. When I'd asked if everything was okay, he'd mentioned marriage difficulties, but never elaborated. Had he discovered something then? Had Audrey managed to convince him otherwise? I needed to understand the full extent of Audrey's manipulation. Looking back at family events, I realized how often she had controlled the narrative, how she would speak for Thomas, how she would intercept questions meant for him, how she had gradually isolated him from me and from his old friends. Through social media, I discovered multiple family gatherings I hadn't known about. Birthday celebrations for distant cousins, weekend trips with Audrey's family. Thomas and the children were in these photos, smiling, while I sat at home, unaware and uninvited. The cruise wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern designed to edge me out of their lives while maintaining access to my financial support. Martha urged me to confront them immediately, but I decided to wait until they returned. This wasn't something to discuss over the phone. I wanted to see Audrey's face when I presented what I knew. Be careful, Lottie, Martha warned. People who've maintained lies this big can be dangerous when cornered. I wasn't afraid. At 68, I'd faced scarier things than a daughter-in-law's wrath. I'd watched my beloved Frank slowly slip away from heart disease. I'd rebuilt my life alone. After everything I'd discovered, I felt a strange calm. The truth, however painful, was better than the web of lies I'd been living in. I prepared myself for their return, organizing my evidence, rehearsing what I would say. I wasn't out to destroy my family. I just couldn't continue pretending everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. The cruise lasted 10 days. During that time, I prepared myself emotionally and strategically for the confrontation. I knew it would change everything, but our family couldn't heal until the truth was acknowledged. They returned on a Sunday afternoon. Around 6, their car pulled into my driveway unexpectedly. I watched through the window as they unloaded, Thomas carrying luggage, Audrey directing the children, all of them tanned and seemingly carefree. I took a deep breath and opened the door before they could knock. "Mom," Thomas exclaimed with forced enthusiasm, "we brought you souvenirs." No mention of my birthday, no acknowledgement of their absence, just bright smiles and a colorful gift bag held out like a peace offering. "Please come in." I said, my voice steadier than I expected. They filed into my living room, the children immediately pulling out their phones, barely mumbling hello. Audrey was talking rapidly about the cruise, the islands, the food, the entertainment, as if we'd discussed this trip for months. "It was such a last-minute opportunity," she explained, avoiding my eyes. "Thomas's colleague couldn't go offered us their booking at half price. We tried calling you before we left, but—" "Reception on the ship was terrible," Thomas added quickly. "We wanted to send you pictures, but the internet package was so expensive." Lies. All of it. The photos on Facebook had been posted from the ship on day 1. "Would anyone like coffee?" I asked pleasantly. "Or I have some cake left from my birthday celebration." A flicker of discomfort crossed Thomas's face. Audrey's smile tightened. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry about your birthday," Thomas said. "With the rush to pack and everything." "We'll make it up to you," Audrey interjected. "Maybe take you out to dinner next weekend." I went to the kitchen and returned with coffee and the cake I'd baked for my birthday party. Still fresh because I'd frozen it that day. As I served them, I noticed how Audrey positioned herself next to Thomas, her hand resting possessively on his arm. How she would subtly cut him off or redirect the conversation when certain topics arose. I've been doing some thinking while you were away, I said once everyone had been served. About family, about honesty, about the kind of legacy I want to leave behind. Audrey's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean, Lottie? I opened the drawer of the side table and pulled out a folder. I found some interesting paperwork while organizing my files. I laid out the financial records first, documentation of all the support I'd provided over the years. Thomas looked embarrassed. Audrey seemed annoyed. Mom, you don't need to remind us of your generosity, she said with a tight smile. I'm not reminding you, Audrey. I'm reminding myself of what family truly means. I turned to Thomas. Did you know there have been withdrawals from my personal account? The one I added you to for emergencies. Thomas's face registered genuine shock. What? No, I haven't touched that account. I showed him the bank statements. Almost $10,000 over 2 years. Audrey jumped in. That must be a mistake. The bank must have mixed up accounts or something. And what about these? I asked, laying out the printouts of transfers to Brian Peterson. The color drained from Audrey's face. Thomas looked confused. Who's B. Peterson? He asked, scanning the documents. You know who Brian is, Thomas, I said gently. Audrey's ex-boyfriend from college. Why would we be sending him money? Thomas looked genuinely baffled, then turned to Audrey with growing suspicion. Audrey's composure was cracking. This is ridiculous. You've been snooping through our private finances. How dare you? Not as ridiculous as discovering my grandson isn't biologically related to my son, I said, my voice quiet but firm as I placed the DNA test results on the table. The room went completely silent. Even the teenagers looked up from their phones. What did you just say? Thomas whispered. The DNA test confirms Jamie is not your biological son, I repeated, looking directly at Audrey, whose face had gone completely pale. But I think deep down, Audrey has always known that. This is insane, Audrey sputtered, standing up so abruptly her chair nearly toppled. You can't just run secret DNA tests on people. That's illegal. What's she talking about, Mom? Jamie asked, his voice cracking slightly. Thomas was staring at the test results, his hands shaking. Is this accurate? He asked me. It is, I confirmed. I ran the test twice to be sure. Audrey lunged for the papers, but Thomas pulled them away. How could you do this, Mom? Sophia cried, moving to stand beside Audrey. You're trying to tear our family apart. No, sweetheart, I said sadly. I'm just bringing the truth to light. The family was torn apart long before today. Audrey began gathering her things, urging the children to do the same. We're leaving. Now. I won't stand here and be accused of such horrible things. Thomas remained seated, still staring at the DNA results. Thomas, Audrey snapped, are you coming or not? He looked up at her, then at Jamie, who stood frozen in the doorway, then back at me. I need to understand this, he said quietly. There's nothing to understand. Audrey was nearly shouting now. Your mother has lost her mind. She's making this up because she felt left out of one vacation. The emails about the Peterson family trust, I asked softly. The pictures of you and Brian from 18 years ago, the striking resemblance between him and Jamie, are those all made up too? Jamie stepped forward, his face pale. What does this mean? Dad isn't my real father. Audrey grabbed his arm. Of course he is. Don't listen to her. But it was too late. The questions had been asked. The truth was beginning to unravel. Thomas stood up slowly. "We're going home," he said in a voice I barely recognized. "All of us. Now." The family left in chaos. Audrey frantically trying to control the narrative, the children confused, and upset Thomas in a state of silent shock. As they pulled out of the driveway, I wondered if I'd ever see them again, if what I'd done was unforgivable. But living with lies had become impossible. Whatever came next would at least be built on truth. After they left, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat in Frank's chair, wishing he was here to help me navigate the aftermath. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked his photograph. His kind eyes seemed to reassure me. That truth, however painful, was always the right choice. The next morning, my phone rang at dawn. It was Thomas. "How could you do this, Mom?" His voice was raw with anger and hurt. "Why couldn't you just talk to me privately instead of ambushing our entire family?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked gently. His silence was answer enough. "I need time," he finally said. "I've asked Audrey to stay with her sister for a few days while I process all this." "I understand," I replied. "I'm here when you're ready to talk." "Don't contact the kids," he added before hanging up. "They're confused enough already." The silence that followed was deafening. Martha called daily, checking on me, bringing groceries when I couldn't face going out. "Give them space," she advised. "The truth is working through them now." 3 days after the confrontation, there was a knock at my door. It was Jamie, alone and looking lost. "Grandma," he said, his voice breaking as I opened the door. "I need to know everything." I made him hot chocolate the way I used to when he was small, and we sat at the kitchen table. I explained what I'd discovered as gently as I could, showing him the evidence but emphasizing that none of this changed how much Thomas loved him. "Dad's been in the garage for days," Jamie confided. "Just sitting there, not talking to anyone. Mom keeps trying to convince everyone you're making this up because you're lonely and bitter." "And what do you think?" I asked. "I think—" He paused, struggling with the words. "I think I've always felt different somehow. Dad and Sophia look so much alike, and I never did. And there's this guy, Brian, who used to show up at my baseball games sometimes. Mom would always get weird when he was there." My heart ached for this boy, now a young man, caught in a web of adult deception. "Does this mean Dad isn't my father anymore?" he asked, his voice small. "Thomas raised you, loved you, taught you to ride a bike and throw a baseball," I said firmly. "Biology is just one part of being a parent. He's been your father in all the ways that truly matter." Jamie nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. I held his hand across the table and we sat in silence for a while. Later that week, Audrey called. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You've ruined everything," she said without preamble. "I hope you're satisfied." "That was never my intention, Audrey. Thomas wants a paternity test for Sophia now. Our marriage is falling apart. Jamie is talking about contacting Brian. Is that what you wanted?" "I wanted the truth," I replied. "What happens next is about healing, not punishment." If you think you'll have any relationship with my children after this, you're delusional, she threatened. I'll make sure they never speak to you again. I didn't rise to the bait. They're adults, and nearly adults, Audrey. They'll make their own choices about who to keep in their lives. She hung up without another word. 2 weeks passed with minimal contact. Martha convinced me to join her weekly bridge group to get out of the house. It helped to focus on something other than the family drama, if only for a few hours. Then one evening, Sophia showed up at my door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Dad showed me everything," she said as I welcomed her in. "The bank statements, the emails, the DNA test. Is it true? Is Jamie not really my brother?" "He's your brother in every way that counts," I assured her. "You grew up together, shared secrets, fought and made up. That bond is real." She nodded, seeming to take comfort in this perspective. "Dad's different now," she confided. "Quieter, but also more present. He asked me about school yesterday and actually listened to my whole answer instead of just nodding along while Mom talked. It was the first positive sign I had heard, and it gave me hope." Thomas called the next day. "I've scheduled family therapy," he said, sounding exhausted but resolute. "Audrey refuses to attend, says there's nothing to discuss. But the kids and I are going." "That's a good step," I encouraged him. "Mom, about the money from your account. We can discuss that later," I said. "Focus on healing your relationship with the children first." He paused. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Not just for that, for the truth. I think I suspected something wasn't right for years, but I couldn't face it." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a beginning. Jamie started visiting regularly, sometimes bringing homework to do at my kitchen table, like he used to years ago. He'd decided to reach out to Brian with Thomas's blessing, curious about his biological heritage, but clear that Thomas was his real father. Sophia followed initially just to check on Jamie, but eventually coming on her own, often staying for dinner. She was angry at Audrey in a way only a teenage girl could be, fiercely, articulately, without mercy. Thomas took longer. The betrayal had cut him deeply. But gradually he began stopping by for coffee, asking for advice, sharing his thoughts as he rebuilt his sense of self and family. Audrey filed for divorce 3 months after the confrontation. She'd never admitted the full truth, but the evidence was too overwhelming to deny. The financial deception alone had been enough for Thomas to see the manipulation that had been happening for years. 6 months after that fateful confrontation, our family had transformed completely. The foundation of lies had crumbled, but from the rubble we were building something new, something honest. Thomas and Audrey's divorce proceedings were underway. He'd moved into a small apartment closer to my house, focusing on rebuilding his relationship with his children and with me. Jamie had met Brian several times with my support and Thomas's blessing. The resemblance between them was undeniable, and Brian had confessed he'd always suspected Jamie might be his son, but had respected what he thought was Audrey's wish to maintain her marriage. He hadn't known about the deception Thomas had endured. The two men had even met once, an awkward but ultimately respectful conversation that showed tremendous courage on Thomas's part. Sophia spent every other weekend with me now. We baked together, worked in my garden, and talked about everything from school to boys to her feelings about the family changes. She was angry at first, blaming me for destroying her family. But gradually, she began to see how the lies had been the real destruction. I used to think family meant staying together, no matter what, she told me one afternoon as we planted tulip bulbs for next spring. Now, I think it means being honest with each other, even when it's hard. Thomas apologized to me properly about a month after the divorce filing. He came over for dinner and brought a beautiful orchid plant. I let Audrey convince me you were trying to control us, he admitted as we sat on the porch after eating. That your help came with strings, that you were interfering. I never stopped to question why she worked so hard to keep you at a distance. We all want to believe the best of the people we love, I said, thinking of how I'd ignored the signs for so long myself. I found all the birthday cards, he continued. The ones you sent that we supposedly never received. She'd hidden them in a box in her closet. Years of cards, Christmas gifts, invitations. I reached over and squeezed his hand. There was no need to pile on more evidence of Audrey's manipulation. The truth was clear now. Financially, things had changed as well. I'd stopped providing support to Thomas and Audrey jointly. Instead, I created clear boundaries. I would help with the grandchildren's education directly, but Thomas needed to stand on his own financially. He agreed this was healthier for everyone. Jamie decided to transfer to a local college to be closer to family during this transition. He'd begun researching his biological medical history with Brian's help, finally getting tested for conditions on both sides of his genetic family. Knowledge rather than fear became his approach. For my 69th birthday, I kept things simple. Martha and I planned a small dinner at my favorite restaurant. I didn't expect much from the family, given everything they were processing. To my surprise, Thomas, Jamie, and Sophia all showed up with thoughtful gifts and genuine warmth. No grand gestures, just honest presence. It meant more than any elaborate party ever could. Next year, Thomas promised, we'll do something really special for the big 7-0. I smiled, appreciating the sentiment, but knowing now that the real gift was this: truth, authenticity, and genuine connection. As I reflected on the painful journey of the past year, I realized that at 68, I'd learned perhaps the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes you need to lose what you thought was yours to find what truly belongs to you. The family I had now was smaller, perhaps a bit bruised, but real in a way it hadn't been before. You know, I told my bridge club friends recently, there's something powerful about standing up for the truth at my age. Society often expects older women to stay quiet, to keep the peace at all costs. But I've learned it's never too late to demand honesty, to require respect, to insist on real love instead of hollow performances. The pain of that lonely birthday had transformed into something valuable. The gift of authentic relationships. The pretense was gone, the manipulation exposed. What remained was a family building itself, back on a foundation of truth. Have you ever had to choose between comfortable lies and difficult truths in your family? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family we rebuild is stronger than the one we lose. I appreciate each and every one of you.